He sits at the far end of the playground, not because he has no one to play with, but because something within him is unfolding quietly. The swings in the distance move like slow-turning moons. Children's voices rise and fall like waves. The world around him is loud, fast, full of motion, but he is tuned inward, listening in a way that has nothing to do with replying. Inside him exists an entire landscape, an inner life filled with careful observations, tiny rituals, secret questions, and private experiments that no one has ever thought to ask him about. People mistake his silence for emptiness, as if sound is the only way to measure presence. They judge him by the speed of his responses, by how quickly he can join in, as if a person's worth is tied to volume. But his quiet is not vacancy at his depth. It is a reservoir from the outside. His stillness looks like distance. From the inside, it is cultivation, a kind of slow-growing. That mismatch between how silence appears and how it truly feels is the root of most misunderstandings about quiet children. Why does a child choose silence? Sometimes it is simply who they are. Some children arrive in the world with nervous systems that crave gentleness. They find rest in stillness. Other times, silence forms as protection. In homes where speaking up invited criticism, where feelings were treated like inconveniences, silence became a safe corner. In classrooms that reward loudness and speed, a quiet child can be labeled as lacking something instead of possessing something rare. And yet, neither temperament nor strategy captures the whole truth. The quiet child is a paradox. They can be deeply social, but cautious about the style of socializing the world demands. They see patterns that others miss. While everyone rushes to be heard, they notice the child left out of the game, the tiny shifts in a teacher's expression. The moment someone's feelings get brushed aside, they gather these impressions like smooth stones, storing them until they become stories, drawings, metaphors, inventions, the raw material of creativity. So many poets, inventors, and thinkers began as silent watchers. In their quiet, they learned nuance. In their stillness, they tested the world before stepping forward. But silence is fragile, living in a world obsessed with immediacy. Quiet kids often internalize a message that corrodes them from the inside. You must be louder to deserve attention, and so they adjust. Some learn to mimic louder personalities, performing extroversion like a script. This performance drains them, cooling the warmth inside. Others retreat even further, convinced the world will never match their rhythm. What starts as a coping mechanism becomes a lifelong negotiation between authenticity and expectation. There is another hidden truth. Quiet children are often assumed to be easy, obedient, low maintenance. Adults relax around them. But being easy is not the same as being cared for. A child who does not demand attention may not be receiving it. In families and schools, attention is often given to the loudest first. The child who shouts their needs gets help immediately. The child who whispers waits. Those weights accumulate. Over time, they carve quiet debts into the heart. Slowly, the child learns to expect less, request less, and believe their needs are secondary. This is how quietness can become both sanctuary and confinement. The sanctuary is introspection, imagination. The confinement is self-reliance. The quiet child learns to treat their voice as dangerous, rehearsing what they want to say only to swallow it. They apologize before they've even spoken sorry. I don't want to bother believing their presence is a burden. Eventually, apology becomes identity. And yet, there is a strange strength in that silence. When quiet people choose to speak, their words carry weight. They use them carefully, deliberately. But being noticed doesn't guarantee being understood. Their communication is often slower, metaphorical, thoughtful. In fast conversations, where the goal is quick replies rather than meaningful ones, their careful words may go unheard. So they shrink themselves even more, trying to fit into the rapid rhythm around them. Maybe the solution is to treat silence as its own form of participation. Silence is not passive, it is patient. It holds space for complexity. Imagine if classrooms and workplaces made room for slow thought. If pauses were normal, if the quiet mind was valued instead of rushed, because so many spaces, offices, classrooms, group discussions are built for speed, not depth. And the quiet child is navigating a world designed against their natural tempo. We must also acknowledge the pain of being misunderstood. Quiet children grow up internalizing society's loudness. They compare their value to the noise around them and come up short. During adolescence, when identity becomes a performance through likes, posts, and attention, the quiet teen can feel out of sync. What once felt like a rich interior life now feels like a burden. They begin to search for permission to be seen, silently asking, "If you look at me, will you understand what you're looking at?" Some quiet children grow into adults who remain in the background by choice or habit. They take supporting roles, set their ambitions, small not out of lack of talent. But because no one taught them how to take up space, others grow into leaders of a different kind. Leaders who listen before they speak, who notice the quiet voices in the room and draw them forward. Leaders who see depth instead of noise. The quiet mind's capacity for complexity becomes an asset when given the chance. So how do we care for a quiet child? We start by honoring their pace instead of forcing performance. Allow their slow replies without rushing to fill silence. Ask open questions instead of interrogations. Give them roles that use their strengths roles, that reward reflection, analysis, observation. Let them be idea recorders, pattern finders, gentle planners. These roles don't isolate them. They dignify their way of engaging. We also help them translate, not by pushing them to be loud, but by giving them tools. Short practice, conversations, phrases to request thinking time, small scripts they can use when overwhelmed. Imagine teaching a child that saying, "I'm thinking, give me a moment," is perfectly normal. That alone could change their entire self-concept. There is a larger philosophical lesson. In a world that confuses speed with intelligence, quietness is a corrective. Listening is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of attention. The quiet child teaches us to slow down, to actually notice the world. Still, the risks are real. Quiet children are overlooked for leadership, misunderstood as disengaged, and skipped in evaluations. Without intervention, they may adopt a lifelong narrative of invisibility, believing their voice is unnecessary. That belief shapes a life. But imagine a world redesigned for them. Classrooms where the slow thinker is invited to speak first. Workplaces where thoughtful silence is respected. Families where stillness is encouraged. These are not abstract ideas, they change destinies. The child under the tree, the one watching the swings as if listening to something deeper than sound, can grow into an adult whose quiet becomes a gift instead of a wound. They can learn to express without abandoning themselves, to take up space without noise, to find people who love slow, unfolding conversations. They can learn to let silence be their sanctuary and their instrument, because there is a paradox in being quiet. The softer you become, the more room you make for others to be loud, but the louder the world grows, the more essential your softness becomes. The goal is not to force the quiet to become loud. It is to teach the world to hear what is already there. If you recognize yourself in this quiet, remember, your silence isn't emptiness, it's potential. It can shield you, limit you, or empower you depending on how it is shaped. The journey is not to erase your quietness, but to guide it, to use it with intention. Quiet people can teach the world how to listen. Loud people can teach the quiet how to be visible. The bridge between them is practice, patience, and unlearning the expectations we inherit. And so, stay with that thought. There is much more beneath the surface. Quiet children grow into many forms: creatives, observers, thinkers, leaders of unusual depth. Silence has many languages. And when the moment finally arrives for the quiet child to speak, the world often realizes to light that it should have been listening all along.